Hey, welcome to Web3 Weekly with your host, Blockstar Technology.
Let's go.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 52, where we're going to talk about security, Charlie. All right.
Security.
So we know security is a huge thing in whether it doesn't matter whether it's Web 2, Web 3, Web 1, Web 0, even in real world, right?
I was about to say, whether at your house.
Exactly, right? With the IoT devices and everything's going on, we could not do this any earlier. I mean, it's never too late to talk about security, and for that, we have invited our good friend Iraz Zabuski from Globalgen, who's also based in Gold Coast and doing some fantastic, really cool stuff. Just not cybersecurity. I mean, Iraz, I'm going to let you go through it, and then I'll tell how he like literally blew my brains off of doing doing a bit of a demo, and he just flexed it, right? And I'm like, holy cow, you know what I mean? So on that note, Iraz, I'm going to pass it on to you. Give a little bit about yourself, and if you can share I don't know, a funny story with us as well to get the ball rolling. Off to you, my friend.
Okay, hi Kosi. Thank you. Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure being here. Funny story. Well, you know what? Actually, here's a good one. It's slightly related to this topic.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, my grandfather lived a very, very humble life experience, right? Plain clothes, small house. This garage was an absolute mess. He had his shed, and in the shed he had thousands of glass jars and glass bottles that he collected over several decades. To give you an idea, when he passed away, we actually had to bring a whole truck, and the amount of bottles he had filled an entire truck. But to give you an idea how this kind of relates, do you know what? Until he actually passed and we had to do this massive cleanup, we didn't realize that amongst all these glass bottles were little artifacts. And by that, I mean, he was awarded multiple medals for bravery and as part of his service to the country and in the army. And he didn't tell anyone about it, not even his wife, not his kids. Nobody had any idea until we spent several days industrially unpacking thousands upon thousands upon thousands of bottles out of
Wow.
his shed that we actually found out.
Oh my God. I think that's what you call humble, like being humble. And I mean, you know, um, and how many people do you come across today who are like that, like not want to boast about what they have achieved in life and what they have done? And I think there are some really good things that we can learn from, um, the older generations, and my God, how did you guys, how did you guys feel as a family? Like, oh my God, how come we didn't know about this? Like,
Well, this is it. We were absolutely shocked. We had no idea.
yeah,
Nobody knew. He never told anyone. And I think that's kind of, in terms of, we're speaking about security, that's the epitome of security. That generation, they lived quietly, they did everything quietly, lived
yeah.
humbly, nobody knew. And that's, I think, is part of the issue that we're having these days, where everybody can't wait to go ahead and put themselves online and put everything they can online.
So true, so true. um cool. Thanks for that, Iras. Thanks for sharing that story with us. And so tell our audience about yourself and what's your company Global Gen does at the moment.
Okay, so I'm the proud founder and owner of Globalgen, and Globalgen basically specializes in infrastructure and applications that provide businesses with ownership and control over their data.
Cool. That's awesome. So, how did you get started in the whole this space? Right? You don't. I always say it's like people in cybersecurity. They don't just wake up in the morning and then say, "All right, I'm going to be a security person." Right? It's almost like it's in their DNA. They dabble around like when they're young, or always conscious of the security, and it's in the part of the character, right? I don't know whether was it same for you or was it different. Did you just wake up and I'm going to be a security guy?
No, well, funny enough, yes, in terms of keeping things safe and secure, that's, I suppose, was always my background growing up. I went to go ahead and have experience of probably now we're approaching maybe almost 30 years in the space of IT and communication, and worked for a few large companies. But in terms of security and the creation of Globalgen, I was working on a project and I partnered with someone, and the project was doing really well and becoming really successful. And I thought, wow, this is great. This is actually going to be the start of a new beginning. And just at that point, we were just on the tip, I managed to go ahead and lose absolutely 100% all of the data. And it was a bit of a reflection point. And I was thinking, oh my God, if that can actually happen to me with my background and my expertise, how are other people going to cope with that? But it didn't start like that. It started with me basically digging in and seeing, okay, how do I go ahead and I prevent that from ever happening to me ever again? And from that, we kind of thought, hey, maybe other companies would be interested in that. And that's basically how Globalgen started and how our very first product started.
Wow.
Nice.
It's always like, I think sometimes when you go and try to create a product, or when you try to go and create a service, I think it doesn't really have the same impact as saying like, okay, like, oh crap, this happened to me. How can I protect myself? And now look at, okay, how can we,
That's where the best ideas come from. You come across a problem and you're like, why isn't there something out there for this?
Yep.
And you create that solution, and there's a lot more other people in the world
Yep.
that are coming across those problems as well.
100%. So I just want to tell a little bit of story about how, when, I met Iraz at the ICT forum on the Gold Coast. And so, we shook hands and all that. And then Iraz said to me, oh, Kosi, can I come and demo you something and see how we can, our services can help you? And I'm like, all right, cool. So we met, I think like one like afternoon, he came to Lloyd's Auctions and sat there. And then he was saying, okay, let me show you something. And what he did was he sent a text message as from someone else to me. I'm like, holy crap. You know what I mean? So what it says is pretty much, it's not that hard if you know. And you only had your laptop with you, Iraz, right?
Correct.
And it was so easy, like how he could emulate like someone else's as messaging someone. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, this is what they need, and then you can really social engineer that process. Oh, I got a message, and now Iraz has my email, and he can send an email saying, okay, Kosi, you already got the approval from your manager, can you please send me this information to me? And now my mind's like, holy crap, I didn't, I thought I knew some of the security stuff, but I realized I got nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because the first time I met Erez as well, which would have been us, he was spoofing the phone calls to everybody in the crowd at
that was a big event that we
Forum,
did.
at the big one at the Royal
The
Pines.
launch of the
And,
ICT forum. Exactly.
Yeah, it was the same thing as you done with text messages, and then you bring AI into it, with the voice recording and the voice cloning, and you call to make sure, Cozzy.
Yeah.
And they're already diverting that out.
Exactly, right.
Yeah,
and where do you stop?
dangerous.
So I think that like really important for us to bring, showcase these, things. At the moment, we talk about two-factor authentication, right? So I would really love to ask you, Iraz, that how do you rate two-factor authentication? We got two-factor authentication. I'm just talking about SMS two-factor authentication, and what should we, if we are in two-factor authentication on SMS, what should we do to prevent those things, or are there any other options apart from using SMS for two-factor?
Well, I'm actually going to go ahead before I answer that. I'm going to go about talk about security as a whole.
That's good. Yeah, let's do that.
One thing that it's to give people a layman's understanding about security is you need to look at two things: the security of people being able to access your data and security of you losing your data. And these are two kind of interrelated but slightly different things. Now, if the easiest way to actually sort of like, demonstrate that to people is, do you remember when you were young and you used to play catch or chasey in school, right? And there were always two people that always got caught. One was the person who stood still and did nothing, and the other one was the fastest person that was there in your class. And the reason is the person who stood there and did nothing obviously is a target. The person who was the fastest in the class was the most attractive. Everyone wanted to chase that person and catch them. Now, the people who never got caught were the people who were kind of in the middle, a little bit hidden away, not really in the center of all the action. And that's, I think, where we have a huge opportunity in Australia, because if you think about it, that's actually the vast majority of Australia comprises of those people in the middle. The small businesses, the individuals who have data that they want to protect themselves. And that is where, with a bit of education and a bit of the right infrastructure and applications, we can actually help them immensely to protect their own personal assets, like high net worth individuals, to protect themselves, for example, from losing their data. And likewise, your small and medium businesses from having their data stolen, or worse, having their data encrypted and lost. In terms of your question, in terms of security, look, authentication is just the very, very first step. And now we live in a day that it's actually quite hard to prove your identity. And by that, I mean, not necessarily to prove that you are who you are, but to prove that other people are not imitating you. So in terms of 2FA, which kind of became a big thing, but surprisingly is hardly being used, you have hardly being used by the medium and small businesses, used, yes, by your large enterprises. So you have your SMS, you get a code and via text, and you need to go ahead and add that code into a website or into an application in order to get access. And as we've proved before, that's one of those things that, it's quite easy to go ahead and, almost in real time, spoof that. You can actually send SMSs from anyone and pretend to be anyone, and likewise receive SMSs. And with SIM spoofing, especially as we're going now to virtual or eSIMs, you can actually do it from anywhere in the world. The second level up from that, which is slightly more secure, is the authentication applications, like, for example, Google Authenticate, etc., whereby you're relying on an application to actually go ahead and generate that code. So there's actually no transmission of information to your device. But again, mostly people use their mobile phones for that, and mobile phones are all built for communication and not built for security. The next level from that is, for example, things like FIDO, for instance. And things like basically like the FIDO standard, which encompasses a whole lot of biometrics, smart cards, and hardware devices to go ahead and authenticate who you are. Now, again, even though these are great devices and they're more secure, you have to look at what happens if I lose it, what happens if somebody else grabs it, what's authentication, what happens if there's a supply chain attack in the middle of it. Yeah. So something is better than nothing. That's the long short of it.
Oh man, I mean, like, when you're talking about that, we recently, changed how we use two-factor as well, because we heard like Vitalik, his Twitter account got hacked, and what they did was pretty much they, with the SMS spoof attack, and and then some, people, the attackers went on his Twitter and posted, okay, connect, they did like a new Ethereum merge NFT, and get your new NFT here, and they connected their wallet and they got drained. So close to about 700,000 US dollars got stolen from these wallets. And the saddest thing is that it's only going to get worse. It's never going to get, like, the more and more this our tech stack, it's getting more and more complicated. I think when the whole thing about email, when they came like, oh, the email is going to make your life super simple. Right? That was a premise, right? And I think the same thing now. We have so many, like you said, Iraz, mobile phones supposed to be for communication, but now we are using for everything, like whether it's banking, for emails, for like all sorts, right? And now we're using for like as an authentication mechanism as well. So you just touched on that one, Iraz. So how safe are we if we are using our mobile devices for other things? Like we think, oh, it's safe because it's done by Google or Android or it's by Apple. What is that safety is?
Well, look, unfortunately, everything out there is subject to an attack if somebody really wants to attack it. The key is basically to make yourself as less attractive as possible and to make sure that the reward for attacking you is as small as possible. Now, that basically means that you need to minimize your surface area. So what we usually do is we go to businesses and we start with educating staff on how to go ahead and almost subdivide their digital identity. Now, if you look at, for instance, what most people do is they use passwords still. Now, and they usually use the same email address. And what most people do is basically they use the same password over and over again across everywhere. So if you're actually getting compromised on one platform, whether it's Apple or whether it's Office 365 or any of the other big ones that have gotten hit over the last few months and few years, you're basically done for. Your entire digital identity is compromised. The first thing we try to teach people is that if you are using passwords, make sure that you have a different one for every occasion and use some kind of software to go ahead and store them for you. Now, again, people always trade convenience for security, and I think that's one of the major flaws that we as society actually have. If you take, for example, we try to get people to go ahead and store the password on an encrypted safe that actually sits outside of the internet on their own personal infrastructure. But that's not as convenient as being able to open your browser and have your password and username being typed automatically, or storing your identity online in some other MSP. So there's always that kind of risk. But I think the key is to really go ahead and see, can we still maintain a large amount of convenience but still having those separations? So if you get attacked on one medium, you're not attacked on all of your digital identity.
Yeah, but it's not that easy. I'm saying, like a lot of things are interconnected, right? And like you said, like a lot of people think like, oh, change your password. It's your name, and then exclamation mark. And then it's like one exclamation mark, two and then change the password. Okay, it's a year. It's like 2023 exclamation mark. I mean, first of all, I had to that's what I used to do, and then now I do less and less, and hardly do it because we just like randomly just generate a password which I can't even remember, and we use a password vault to safeguard our passwords. But now with everything, and now even those password walls are getting hacked. One of like couple of our people who we know in the Web3 community, they had their private keys in a platform called LastPass, and LastPass got hacked, and that data got decrypted, and their wallets got attacked. So again, like going to a like external provider who says like, oh, it's all secure, they got all the certifications to showcase that how secure they are, but still those platforms are getting attacked and getting decrypted. So what is your recommendation? Like what are the best steps? Like, I don't know, like as a mom and pop, what should they do?
So look, I'll give you an example, right? And I'm going to make a plug here for an open source software that we're completely unassociated with, but we use it quite often, and it's called KeePass. Now,
Okay.
to give you an idea, there's others as well. And look, if I'm going to probably get hammered over here because somebody's going to go, no, you should use YubiKey and Fido2 and etc. Yes, but we're not there yet, right? So it's all about steps. So, for example, if you're going to use something like LastPass, for the same amount of convenience, you can use something like KeePass, which you can literally store on your own device in an encrypted, basically, file. So the only way to access that encrypted file is to go ahead and break its encryption. If it's in AES-256 encryption, that could take millions of years to go ahead and do. Now, with that, when you actually open that file, you can, again, very conveniently with, basically a short key, go ahead and type your password. You can also load that application on your mobile phone and use your fingerprint to open it and copy and paste passwords from your mobile device. So it's quite convenient. Is it as convenient in as Google, for example, or Edge saving all your passwords? No. But can someone go ahead and extract them as CSV? Also no. Is it as convenient as LastPass? Well, LastPass is compatible. It's web-based. It's compatible with a lot of applications, etc. Basically, everything is on the internet, and you can access and you can actually store many different things on it. But again, you've gone ahead and you've made yourself the most attractive child in the playground. Everything is actually stored, even though it's well encrypted, everything is actually stored in a central location. I mean, with Web3, you'll be able to decentralize some of those applications, but even then you will still have keys, and those keys will need to be stored somewhere, and they will be vulnerable. So it's a vicious cycle that continuously goes. So the whole idea is, again, how do we actually localize and minimize the attack? I mean, if you look at LastPass, the amount of effort it takes to go ahead and decrypt those keys is the same as the effort it takes to go ahead and decrypt your personal key. But with you, the reward is only you. With them, the reward is millions of individuals.
That's right. I mean, that's the thing, is it opens up and I think they always look at, like opportunistic, right? Okay, who are the low-hanging fruit? And they are the ones going to get targeted. Like, what is the ROI on that attack? And so if we bring that ROI, where does Australia sit in the wider scheme of, in the global? We are like, come on, let's talk about that.
You know what? I need you to. Last time I googled, most attacked countries, Australia, I think, was number 5.
What?
I think we've become a little bit better. I think now we're number 6 or number 7, but we're still up there. We're definitely, and you're talking about, the 5th or 7th most, basically the top 10 most attacked countries out of, 100 and something, 130 something, or 140 something countries in the world. Why is that? I think largely is because we're very complacent with the way we do things. It's a great place to live. You're quite easygoing. And yes, your first name or your dog name with the 1, 2, 3 is good enough. Even companies that try to implement, rules like you must change your password every, 3 weeks or 6 weeks or 3 months, etc. You have people who basically change the password by adding an exclamation mark or the number 4 at the end of it, or a date. Yes. And you find that all across the place. And even organizations that are slightly better off and have, VPNs and keys, etc., still fall short in the sense of protecting their infrastructure. One thing I think that in terms of complacency that people need to realize, and this is where we've started going, for example, into body corporates and trying to teach them for the residential and high-rise building, is that infrastructure itself is compromised. For example, when you have, your NBN connection, you're actually still connected to a central, DSLAM server where you can go ahead, or VDSL2 server where you can go ahead and get access to everyone else who's connected to the same server. Likewise, when you're in a hotel and you connect to the Wi-Fi in your room, you are basically exposed. Even with new technologies like FTTN and companies that are offering you now your new high-speed internet speeds of your GPON type services, get 250 meg by 20 meg or 1,000 or 1 gig by 40, etc. All of those actually share a common channel down. So what we do is we basically go ahead to body corporates and businesses and start with their core infrastructure, the connection to the internet, and make sure that that is done in a secure way with the minimal number of checkpoints between them and the World Wide Web. Things like firewalls, we encourage everyone to actually have one, especially if you're in business. They're quite cheap, and you get it. It will actually help protect you or protect some access to you. But even then, most manufacturers start with the default settings of everything from inside the business has unrestricted access out. Again, that's the first thing for or the first entry point for ransomware. So a good health check that we tell people is to use TeamViewer, and they say yes, and we go, great, that means you're not secure because you just allowed basically access from internally from your organization to the outside world on any port. So, and I'm not saying TeamViewer is bad or AnyDesk is bad, they're great products, but businesses need to learn how to go ahead and protect themselves, so they only allow those IPs on those ports to actually communicate, not everything on any port. So there's a lot of little things that basically high net worth individuals can go ahead and do to protect their own personal data. Small businesses can go ahead and do quite affordably to protect their data. Larger businesses can go ahead and do, again, to protect theirs. And it all starts with your core infrastructure, and it goes to your applications, and then goes from there into education.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But Riz, we touched base a little bit earlier with the move of AI
and quantum computing.
Oh, well, that's another story, yeah. But we've got the AI. People want to put everything online, like you said, and with that, it's easy. You can clone a voice in like 10 seconds of audio. You can regenerate images. How much is that? How do you see that changing? Like, obviously, the social engineering, there's already been cases coming out on there where they pretended to be someone and asked for money because they'd been kidnapped, and it
like
wasn't
that kid, isn't it?
Yeah, that kid. But also Australia, like if you call the ATO says in Australia, you declare that your voice identifies you. And with the new voice cloning, if you ring the ATO, they've actually got a system where you can bypass all your passwords and credentials by saying in my voice, Australia identifies me.
Wow. I think probably they had to start rethinking about their systems now, isn't it?
Maybe Riz needs to get on the phone to them.
Look, there's again, if we're going from the very large organizations. If you look at, for instance, let's say banks, in quite a few banks in Australia, for example, they actually have exactly the same thing. When you're trying to go ahead and make a large transaction online, it actually, a screen pops up and says, repeat after me. And you basically have to repeat, my voice confirms my identity. And if you say that, it actually does that. Now, it's done as almost a third factor authentication. So there's the first authentication, you got into your account. There's a second authentication, which is either your text message or your authentication app or your Shield app, etc. And then there's a final one, which is your voice. So they're kind of layering multiple ways to try and identify you. Now, it's actually going to take a persistence of someone to go ahead and try and attack that system, and they will be attacking an individual rather than a group. So it will be basically someone who's out there online advertising that they've got lots of money, especially in crypto, those are the people who will basically be the first to lose it. And there's no shortage of YouTube videos that started off, a few months earlier with, yes, we've made a fortune on crypto, we're millionaires, here's the boat, here's the car, here's the plane, here's the hotel, oh, we're broke. This is what actually happened. And I think the key is part of, as society, we have to be a little bit more humble with what we post online and realize that anything that's out there can be used against you.
I mean, that's it,
Yeah. And then another trending one I've actually been seeing within Australia, and I'm not sure if you're on top of this one, but people, a lot of it's happening a lot to real estate agencies. So as they're selling the house, I'm not sure how they're doing it, but house is sold. Cozzy, I've sold my house to you, Rez, as the real estate agent. Then a fake email comes from the real estate agent.
Yes.
I don't know what they're doing to find out you've bought my house, if that's public or what that is. And then you get a fake invoice number and you go pay your deposit, and you find out a week later, you make a phone call, that you didn't actually pay the deposit to the right person.
Look, so the thing is, nowadays, that's actually part of the problem, is that with everything being online, even kids can actually get access. In fact, mostly kids get access, and they have the time to spend on it. And they can go ahead and learn, use YouTube to learn how to do a lot of malicious things, even if it's accidental or just for fun. Anyone can actually send any email from any email address using, a small, basically self-hosted postfix server on a Raspberry Pi, for $35. The header will be wrong. Again, if you have a look, the IP address won't actually fit. Large companies are starting to take notice of that. They're starting to actually go ahead and make sure that your SPF records are correct and your DKIM keys are correct. Otherwise, they block your email or they send it to spam. But a lot of the very, very large companies, like your Googles and your Microsoft, etc., don't do it because of convenience. And the reason for that is because then people will actually go ahead and not receive email, or they will go into spam, and you will actually lose some of those transactions that happen on day to day. So it's a little bit of education to go ahead and teach people that if it came from a source outside of the network, to go ahead and flag it. And it's about teaching, IT staff within Australia on how to do it. Part of what we do, again, for businesses is we go ahead and create that kind of awareness and that kind of methodology and those kind of rules within the system to try and prevent that. And I have to tell you, in every single case, we actually met with resistance. Why do all my emails have to come with a warning label? Careful, this has a risky attachment. Careful, this is from an outside organization. Why do actually customers get afterwards, rejection emails from web servers where they're actually being told, so your email was rejected because you actually failed, your SPF record is not correct, etc. We actually met with that resistance, but we find, funnily enough, that with a little bit of education on both sides of the fence, businesses are quite happy to adapt and improve that once they know that, okay, that will actually improve my security.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we have a question, and it says how do you best weigh up all right, that's a question. So there you go. Can you see that question?
There you go. How do you best weigh up the benefits of securing assets versus the cost, and how does this cost or benefit change with the scale of asset or entry? Okay, so I'll give you an example. You can start with zero cost and a little bit of inconvenience. Download, again, we've mentioned something like KeePass, or go and buy a YubiKey and start using it. Things that basically cost you anywhere from $0 to $50, and start changing your password for every single thing. You can keep your same email address, but just diversify your password portfolio across, or your authentication portfolio across every single media account. Stop things like single sign-on with Office, or use Google or Facebook to sign into this account. Again, you're centralizing, and the idea is to go ahead and diversify, and that costs you actually nothing. if you're in, if you have ever done investing online, the first thing that they actually tell you is they tell you, well, only invest what you're prepared to lose. And they always start you with this magical number. Let's start with 10%, right? Don't stake more than 10%. Because if you lose 10%, you can actually recover. So if you're holding any kind of asset, for example, digital assets, hold them in different wallets. Go ahead and split your assets across into 10 different wallets, spread across 10 different mediums. So if one gets attacked, you're not limited. Don't keep everything on an exchange. Because again, first of all, if you keep it on an exchange, you don't own the wallet. The exchange owns the wallet. It's physically you don't have money. It's the same as actually being in the bank. There's no difference between that. The bank actually holds all your money. You don't actually own anything. You're just a few ones and zeros on their system. If they lost, you lose. So except they're insured, and most exchanges aren't.
Yeah.
So in terms of assets, it's really a case of spread your eggs. A lot of things, for example, people go ahead and here's a funny one. How many people do you know who go ahead and store all of their personal and business data on, OneDrive, for example, or the SharePoint, etc., or even Google Docs? Have you ever read the terms and conditions?
Yes, that's right. They own everything.
Exactly. So if you read the terms and conditions, Microsoft did it the best. If you read the terms and conditions for Microsoft, it's all printed in really tiny font, but in the middle of it, there's a higher font and it's all capitalized. You have to go ahead and post this because it's unbelievable and people still miss it, right? It's almost like, 2 or 3 font size bigger, where they actually say, we don't take any responsibility for your data. Everyone must have a third independent way to actually back up their data. But most people actually don't. So in terms of answering the question, how do we weigh the cost and benefit? I would say that if you take your entire assets and you divide them into, let's say, whatever value you're happy to lose. So if it's 10%, you need to make sure that you have, you're storing them, I'm assuming they mean digital assets, in the 10 different wallets. If it's physical things like your company data, and you're actually storing it on something like Google Drive or your OneDrive, etc., go ahead and make sure that you actually have an automated backup to that. So if they fail, then at the very least you can actually go ahead and recover. A classic example of that is, I think about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Amazon, due to a power failure, lost about 6% of their data from one of the data centers. 6% is something that a company like Amazon just writes off. They spend a few $1 million and they've gone ahead and recovered it, so the total loss became only 3%. That 3% equated to over 160,000 companies losing their data worldwide. Now, for Amazon, it's 3%. We live with it. For those companies, it's 100% of all their data. Now, if they didn't have backup, that's then lost. So when you're actually weighing the cost, quite often you'll find that actually keeping everything on the cloud, especially as you become bigger, will actually cost you more than having a multi-layered strategy where some is kept on cloud, some is kept privately, some is kept on premise.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things, Iraz, you model, right? This is one of your theses that you presented, when we launched the ICT forum here, is that think of it as a virus. How do you, fight against a virus? It's like you had to, make sure that everyone around, not just one person, needs that. So can you please shed some light on that, please?
Yeah, well, the easiest way to take a note or to protect yourself is to actually look inside rather than outside. If you look at your body is an amazing organism. If you think about it, we get attacked every day by, let's look at it, right? Worms and viruses. Let's translate that to IT. What are the two mediums of attack? Worms and viruses. Funny enough, they're exactly the same. Now, the way your body fights against that is by having a large number of cells that go ahead and each one of them individually are able to go ahead and fight it. your data or your DNA is spread across, what is it, about 84 million or something like that cells, or billion cells in the human body. The same thing in terms of recovery. Each one of your cells is able to regenerate itself. This is a great classical example of how you should look at your own personal data and your own business data, making sure that, first of all, your personal data is separated from your business data. Second of all, that if you look now at both, whether it's your personal or your business, it's actually spread across various locations, each one of them secure within its own right. It could be, like we always recommend, we basically go ahead and disperse everything into data centers, into private encrypted storages for businesses. So if they lose your, let's say your Google or your Microsoft or even your self-contained storage, we are able to immediately recover that data. Those are the kind of things that you need to actually look at. It could be one of the things that used to work, when it could be as simple as that, but unfortunately nowadays doesn't really work very well, is people used to go ahead and take a USB key or a hard disk and copy things or backup things. And when you look at it nowadays, I explain to people, it's not a very cost-effective solution, because for that to work, let's say a hard disk costs you $50 because prices have gone down, right? To make it really effective, you need to really take a hard disk, and if you want to have one hard disk for your last 24 hours that you copy to, one hard disk for a week, another hard disk for week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, etc. Do that for about 3 months, right? That's how many hard disks you have. And then if something happens, put hard disk number 1 and see where it is. Oh, still infected or still lost, put hard disk number 2, then put hard disk number 3, then number 4, etc. A lot of people still have that one hard disk where they go ahead and they copy everything, and they copy everything into it once a day. Now, if your computer gets infected, you've just infected that hard disk once a day. So we have automated solutions that go ahead and solve that. Now, if you add the cost of all those hard disks to try and make yourself, secure, they far outweigh the cost of having a simple automated service that actually does the exact same thing for you.
I mean, there are some really cool things that we spoke about maybe a couple of years ago, maybe, like, was it pre-COVID when we caught up with that that time? I think it was pre-COVID, wasn't it? When we caught up. So like we were speaking about, like, okay, like, like crypto, when you get crypto attacked, right? Like, not crypto in a sense, like in blockchain crypto, this is like cryptographically your machine, your systems get locked, like you get attacked, and then they say like, okay, we need, whatever number of bitcoins. Ransomware. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Right? And I was like, oh, okay, crap. How do you overcome this? And then Iraz, right.
All it takes is one click
and then boom, it's gone, right? And then like Iraz came up, he's like, oh no, Kosi, you can do this. We got that covered. And I'm like, oh crap, okay, let's talk about it. So Iraz, I would not do any justice if I try to explain what that is. So I will let you, the expert, explain to us, like, what did you what do you have to overcome these crypto attacks?
Sure. So look, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, it's there are two things that you need to think about in terms of security. One is protecting people from accessing your data. The second one is, if you lose your data because access has already been granted, then you're basically the subject of ransomware. How do you recover quickly? And what we do is we basically offer businesses with a service that gives them immutable snapshots that happen, as regularly as every 5 minutes, or if it's transactional, that can actually happen in real time. And the data is kept in immutable snapshots using something called ZFS and spread across data centers within Australia. Now, what actually happens is when they actually get encrypted, most people, if you look at, for example, if you're getting encrypted, and let's say you have a terabyte, a virtual machine, and let's say a terabyte worth of size, to recover that 1 terabyte from backup is going to cost you about 2 hours. Now, just moving the files across. Now, even if you recovered it from backup, but it's from the wrong backup, you need to then go ahead and repeat that process over and over and over again until you finally recover a clean backup, and then put your recent backup in a sandbox or your backup before that and try and recover some of the data. We can actually see with the snapshots when there was, because they actually only snapshot the changes within your system, we can actually see with those snapshots exactly when there was a spike or when things started being encrypted. So if you regularly, I'm not talking about adding data or removing data, but if you as an individual or as a business to regularly change data by some amount, let's say if it's a large organization, you're changing data by, let's say, a gigabit per day, for example. And we see that regularly. And suddenly we can see that there is a spike in the amount of data being changed, which means you're actually actively having a virus that's being encrypted. You can actually roll back to the exact that moment of time when that actually occurred and have your latest data available for you instantly. And by instantly, we've managed to come up with a way to actually have businesses recover in under 200 milliseconds, irrespective of the size of their storage. So you're talking about the ability to literally go ahead and realize, or your IT department realize, hey, we're under ransom attack at the moment. Everything is getting encrypted, and with the press of a single button, recovered before that attack actually occurred.
I mean, like,
Man, that is
200
powerful.
milliseconds, right? Recovering under 200 milliseconds. So this is what called the ZFX.
Especially when you know that these days people are buying that for like $20, $50 off the dark web.
Yes.
And they can just go
Attack.
spam it out and attack any business that they want.
Of course.
That they can try attack.
And that's the thing, is like people think, oh, we got a backup. But how do you know that backup is not infected?
Yeah.
And people are, and when you're under attack, you just try it, and this is where the IT guys going to like, holy crap, I mean, like, you're trying to fight with fire, you know what I mean? And it's constant battle. And, having something like, as what Iraz said, is like, if you can, sort of, security is never important until you get attacked, right? It's always afterthought. Am I right, Iraz?
Absolutely. Look, and it happens to the best of us. Everybody is a little bit complacent until shit hits the fan, and when it does, you go, oh no, I wish I should have done this. But it's more than that. How many people lose your data because they accidentally erased it? So imagine, the ability to go ahead and do that. And it's again, funny case, but we have had instances where, finance department will call us and they will say, hey, you know what? 6 months ago, we had this data and it's now gone. And it's not due to any virus or malicious threat. It was, 6 months ago, it was actually erased. And the ability to go ahead and that data may have taken years, to construct, and the ability to go back, back in time, 6 months ago and bring that data back instantly. That's basically what we mean by making sure that, you basically own and control your data.
I mean, that's it. That's just crazy. I mean, like, one of the things actually you mentioned earlier as well, Iraz, is that, people still to this date treats exchanges as banks. They think like, oh, I got my crypto in an exchange, so it's safe there. Oh, they're like a bank, because they don't realize the difference between a bank and an exchange.
Banks have insurances.
Yeah,
up to
exactly.
250K, I think it is, from the Silicon Valley banks to close it down.
Right. So
exchanges, not so much.
Exchanges are not banks, and if you don't, what you call, not your private key, not your crypto, right?
Yep.
I think that message still,
not your keys, not your crypto.
Yeah, not your keys, not your crypto. I think that message still, people are talking about it, but people are all. This is what I see. I see as humans, we value convenience over privacy, convenience over security.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And
it's not only crypto. I'll give you an example. When my eldest daughter, when she actually started going to university, she was so happy. She's got a credit card and tap and go, etc. And it was great. She was independent. Everything was fantastic. Until one day she went with her friends to Sydney, flew back to the Gold Coast, and realized she left her wallet on the bus. And somebody went across the whole of New South Wales and tapped away. Now, to give you an example, we went ahead and complained to the bank, And the bank still basically gave us the generic answer. Look, we're keeping the account open so we can trace it. And we thought, fantastic. But in the meantime, she saw her funds going down to zero. So we actually went ahead and quickly took all her funds from the account and put it somewhere else. Right, to help prevent that. And even though it was a Visa access account, which means it cannot actually go, negative, they allowed it to go negative. And 3 months later, she still doesn't have her money, right? Returned to her. She has a new bank, new card, but that original one, she gets actually a letter in the post from that bank telling them that they're suing her because her access account is actually negative by such a large amount, and she hasn't actually paid it. And it took us physically going to the bank manager and him calling the head office and 2 additional weeks to try and resolve the matter. And yes, return all our funds. Now, that is with a large one of the top 4 banks within Australia that spends, literally in the vicinity of 60 to 80 million a year on security. Now, imagine a crypto exchange, not that they're short of funds, but it spent probably in the order of, $50,000 to $60,000 a year on security. And you're actually entrusting your keys in that. Now, you do get some benefit, which is why people do it. When you log into your bank, you don't get a wonderful graph that shows you every day how your portfolio is going up or going down, right?
Well, at the moment, it's all down.
Exchange, there's the graph, there's the dashboard, there's the pie chart, there's the avatars, and you go, wow, I'm doing so well until it's gone.
And then you get to see the coins you haven't been buying doing the same thing too. So you want to buy them ones.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, that's it, right?
That's surprising. I always thought with it being a credit card, it was the bank. It's the bank's money, so it was their. Yeah, it was on their fault. But I guess it does. You've got to go through a lot of chain of commands to get through it and
100%
resolve that out.
Look, and you bought that email before, right, with the real estate agency. Now, how's this? So this is traditional system. We're not talking about Web3, etc. This is us. This is like Web 1. You've actually got a false email that goes across to a client and gives them a fake BSBN account number to transfer the funds. Now, that BSBN account number corresponds to a real account. Somebody owns that account. They're inside Australia. The customer transfers a large sum of money to that account, notifies their bank that, hey, this was a fraudulent account. How long does it take before those funds are actually retrieved? So unfortunately, what you have today is you have this kind of, identity theft, but also fake identities that have access to legitimate bank accounts where money gets transferred, go to an ATM, retrieve everything in actually cash, or even better, transfer it from the bank account directly to crypto and disappear. And even though it is covered by the bank's insurance to some extent, often it is not. We had 2 recent people who just came to us in passing for advice, and they said, look, I had basically, one was $16,000, the other one was $30,000 taken out of my bank account. I called the bank, I can't actually get it back. So despite the insurance, the bank in these particular instances, they're not responsible. It was actually your fault. It's a little bit better with credit cards that can flag the transactions and reverse it. But if it's your actual bank account that was actually taken, that money is lost.
That's lost. So, one of the things actually, I was like flying to Sydney, and then there was this, white iPhone cable with a charging point, right? And people are like, oh, let me plug it in and charge, right? And I told them, like, okay, do not use that cable, because that cable, it's, where the USB is, you can have a little, like a microcomputer and just track all the data, and you can just, transmit to somewhere else. And someone could just stream all that data from your phone, because when you plug it in.
Was this the plane supply?
No. This is at just the airport.
Left it at the airport.
And they thought they got lucky with the charging cord, right? And to I am so paranoid that I don't even plug it in any wall sockets, right? I always have my own portable charger that I use. I have two of them, which I use, and people just go and plug it into those ports. They don't, I don't know, Iraz, am I being too paranoid, or is it a thing?
Look, you're not being too paranoid, because again, it comes to, for example, if you're using the code, somebody else's code in, let's say, your friend's house, you're being most likely safe, unless your friend likes to tinker with technology. But if you're somewhere where there's high traffic area, yes, the wall socket itself with a USB is a very good, valuable target. The charging ports are valuable targets. Even wireless chargers are valuable targets. So there's no shortage of that. It all comes to, again, to you have to weigh what is the value versus what is the actual risk. And it's really a case of, a long time ago, people used to actually, they probably still do it, they would put, the fake plastic covers on ATMs to card steal people from ATMs. Because a lot of different cards go across there. Nowadays, you can actually go with a backpack and sniff people's cards from 3.5 meters away. Because of NFC. So, the ATM versus the drone flying across the concert, the drone flying across the concert is a more valuable thing than the ATM. The same thing, I suppose, with chargers. If you're sitting in a high traffic area and there's a charger, I would probably suggest not to use it.
Yeah. And, even like there's so much of these things that now you just don't know how secure you are. Like you can have with the scanning, you might be someone too close to you with a scanner and just swiping your cards, your credit cards and things like that. It's how where do you stop? I think that security, it should be always think and then with the whole quantum computing, right? And they're saying like how they're now with the AI and quantum, like how they're predicting these private keys, and they're how they can build those passwords in a fraction of time that we would thought like, it's going to take thousands of years or millions of years to crack this, like RSA, for example, and that's under threat because of quantum computing.
Well, I think it's one of those things like if the government can do it, like the NSA, if they've got the powers, which Israelis really high up on there, I get into these documentaries quite a bit on this technology, Israelis, NSA, and if they can do it, there's nothing stopping anyone else outside of that doing it. Might be a little bit delayed or might not be there yet, but they can do it. Anyone can do it.
Anyone can do it. I mean, that's just a craziness. So just before we end, Iraz, we're just getting, and we can just talk about this until the cows come home. I just want this is one of the burning things I want to bring up, is that Office 365, right? Every company using Office 365 because it's Microsoft and it's secure. What should we look out? I mean, we can't say to people, okay, don't use Microsoft Office 365 because they're already using it. And so what are the things that you would see as, okay, if you're using Mac Office 365, be careful. These are the pitfalls. What are those? And
so first of all, this is more, I suppose, for let's start from the users to actually let's start mostly Office 365 for organizations. If you're an individual user and using Office 365 as a home account or etc., just realize that you should still go ahead and enable 2FA on it for your login. That's number one. If you're using it as a business, make sure that you go ahead and you enable DKIM, so at least people who are receiving emails from you know that it's from a trusted account. Make sure that overall you have 2FA. Regularly check in the reports in Office 365 when was the last time that users have actually changed their passwords and enforced that. Go ahead and activate certain rules on the messages in the mail flow to make sure that, for example, if you have groups or shared mailboxes, that people from outside of the organization cannot actually go ahead and send email to these groups. It's only internal for communication. Make sure that you have an email address that's dedicated for large external email supply, like for example, sales or info or accounts or whatever, and that those actually email addresses are scanned vigorously, and you have actually rules for alerts for which files do you apply and which files you don't apply. Have rules for things like names, like don't allow external email addresses that come from outside organization to have the name or a header with a value of an employee within the company. There's basically an ocean of things that you can actually do on Office 365 to go ahead and help protect your organization. Now, a lot of it comes down to how much time you're willing to spend, reading about it or going to forums or watching YouTube videos on how to do it, or how much are you relying on your IT person to know about those things. But there's definitely quite a bit that you can actually do. The best thing you can actually do is not use it.
I know you're going to say that. That's why I said, okay, don't say that,
So
but again, it's always convenience versus security. It's convenient. It looks funky. People love having Teams meetings, so you're trading.
So on that note, we could end this podcast. And before we go, Iraz, do you want to tell the community if they want to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Look, it's really simple. You can go to globalgen.net and send us an email, and or look us up online, and that's possibly the easiest way to go ahead and keep in touch.
Cool. And then we'll also put the details when you're posting this on LinkedIn and other platforms as well, all your details, so that anyone got any questions about when it comes to security, they can contact Iraz, company with Globalgen. So on that note, thank you so much, Iraz, for joining us today. And security you can't have enough security. It's constantly evolving, ecosystem, and have to keep on going.
It's like a organic document.
Document, exactly.
It just keeps growing.
Yeah.
Organic system. It keeps growing, and
constantly.
The body analogy works well. New virus, new immune system. New virus, new immune system.
That's it. So
absolutely. Look, thank you very, very much, guys. It's always a pleasure catching up with you.
Cool. Thank you, Raz, and thank you
Raz.
to everyone who joined us today on Twitter Spaces, on Meta.
Our 52nd podcast, the 1 year mark.
Oh my God!
1 year of podcast.
1 year of podcasting. So this is a big one, Raz.
Oh wow! So I should have been in your office with a bottle of champagne.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good too. Cool. And thank you to everyone from all the platforms who joined us. I really appreciate, Blockstars really appreciate participating in this, podcast. And please hit us up with any questions that you guys have, because, or what do you want us to talk about? Yeah. Isn't it? Because that helps us. Yeah, 100%. So on that note, guys, thank you everyone, and Iraz, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot.
See you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week, same time, same place.